Hello! In this video, I will walk you through the process of getting the project files onto your computer so that you can work on them, and that means forking and cloning the repository. But before I actually show you how to do these things, I want to briefly explain to you what they are and why you need them. Imagine that this big box up here is GitHub, and this smaller box down here is your computer that you want to work on. On GitHub, there's a Git repository called Algorithm Archive by the algorithm archivists, and you want to work on this project. The one thing you could do is clone the repository, meaning making a local copy of it on your machine, work on it, but you will not be able to push changes back to the GitHub repository. That is because you do not have write access, and that is because if everyone had write access, anyone could just do what they want and hurt the project, and that is definitely not what we want. So we need to use another process for the contribution, which is called forking and pull requests. So instead of directly cloning the repository, what you do is you create a copy of it. That means you fork the project. You then have a full copy of the entire thing on GitHub, but this one is yours. You can do whatever you want with it, and whatever you do in it doesn't affect the original. So you're actually free to completely destroy the entire thing if you want. It doesn't really matter. So what you can then do is clone the repository onto your machine, work on it, and then push these changes back to your copy. And that is possible because it is your copy. Again, it doesn't really affect the original. And then to get these changes back to the original, that process is called a pull request, which I will cover in a separate video. For now, we will focus on these two things, forking and cloning. Now let's actually perform these two tasks. To fork a repository, you go to its project page, and at the top right corner there's a fork button with a number next to it. Click the fork button and this pop-up might come up. If it does, select the user or organization that you want to fork the project to and click it. It'll then take a couple of seconds until it's done. Now this is your copy of the repository, and as I explained, you can do with it whatever you want. But the first thing you have to do is clone it. Now to clone a repository, all you have to do is go to clone or download at the right side of the repository page, and you're presented with two options, HTTPS and SSH. Now if you don't know which one to use, just select HTTPS. SSH has some advantages, but it requires some setup, which I will explain in another video of this series. But for now, just copy the HTTPS URL. Then you have to open up a terminal and go into a directory where you want to create the project directory. In this case, I named that workspace inside my home directory. So there's just an empty directory called workspace. Now what I want to do is run the command git clone and paste the URL right behind that. And that will create a new directory called algorithm archive in the current directory, and in that one are all the project files that I need to work on. The archive, for example, the chapters, styles, book JSON, contributors MD, and so on. Now you have a copy of the repository that you can work with, and you can push things back to your fork.